Hi, Misha here, and I have been spring cleaning, as I've alluded to in a few videos. And I found some things. Some things might be worth doing a video on. This is my East German build, MPI-KM, relatively early with the more polished blued finish versus the later matte style. But of course it has the beechwood lower and East German mag in it. One of the multiple variations of for sale pouch. And there are no imports of these, either pre-ban, post-ban, or otherwise. So what we are left with are parts kits. We've had several different types over the years. And I just so happened to find this back way in storage. And before doing this video, it was unopened, but I needed to know what was in the box, so I did just now cut the tape. This is an East German MPI-KM kit. In storage for probably 8 years. Received way back when from Arms of America. Obviously, no barrel. Very few of these kits had barrels, and the ones that did typically came out of, well, Israel, which were obtained from the PLO. Cool to have the original German barrel, but they were often mismatched and or refinished. And we've had several kits over the years. One of my kind of early builds was from an Apex kit. I've painted over blued finish using the original furniture. Right now you can see the handguard's a little chewed up, but it's functional for now, and I'll probably buy a nicer one later. I just had a friend put this together for me. I needed to add a... But those were scrubbed because they came out of the Balkans. East Germany was a major weapons exporter, probably sending over 1 million AKs around the world, sometimes very clandestine. But we've had higher quality kits in the sense that they have their original German markings and serials. And these were meant to be major parts matching. Not 100%, because especially the earlier guns had lots of serialized parts. The last one I opened up had 2 mismatched parts. I believe it was the gas tube and the recoil spring guide, but everything else, including the lower handguard and safety and bolt and all that stuff, matched. But yeah, this has not been out of the box. Let's open it up, check out the numbers, the year, and the overall condition of these parts. And of course, we will talk about MPI history while we're at it. And if you could, please do like, share, and subscribe. Check out the link to Patreon if you'd like to help support us. And yeah, I should do spring cleaning more often. This was a pretty neat find, so I want to share it with you. My rifle was assembled using parts from just one of these kits. But let's set it aside so we have room to get everything out of here and try not to drag too many packing peanuts along with the parts. Alright, first thing out, cleaning rod. Seems like a small thing, except unless you're Century Arms, who always seem to be including them. I'm really going to try to not make a packing peanuts mess. Hang on. So, pulled out the mag. These kits are pretty cool. They came with East German mags. This one is a little dull because it's covered in cosmoline and it's been in storage, but clean it up. They're pretty nice, well made, although very standard European style ribbed mags. Alright, the main part of the kit's in a thin plastic bag. Only 4.5 packing peanuts escaped. I don't think anything else is in here. Maybe some old cobwebs. Again, that was all taped up, so yeah, let's get this aside before I make a peanut mess. Okay, and by thin plastic bag, it's literally a shopping bag with handles. That's adorable. From Arms of America, a relatively professional company. Hey, if it works, it works. It just makes me feel better because sometimes I use that as well. And some stuff is loose and some stuff is in additional bags in here. So let's pull it out. We've got the handguard. We'll look at that in a bit. The buttstock. We'll look at it more, including its date code, in a minute. Enthralling TV, I'm sure. The top cover. The carrier. It's not so bad that it's in a bag all like this, because those packing peanuts would have kept things from shifting around overly much. Keep in mind too, guys, these are guns that were made in the 60s, 70s, and then were cut up, demilled. Even in nice condition, you're going to get some just wear and tear from transit storage. What have you? Sorry. There's the unique German pistol grip. And then the rest of our components are in a plastic bag. Alright. We're mostly going to focus on the large components first, but I had to fish out one thing from the parts bag, the trunnion, because we got to know what our date is. Looks like we have 1969. 69. Relatively early. As I said, limited production began as early as 64, 65. Full rate, especially with this style furniture, by 66. And this basic style or pattern would continue till at least 1972. So, and that's just when they switch over to kind of the middle generation styling. But yeah, these should have relatively polished blued parts. And yeah, we'll talk about the rest. Because it's so unique and iconic to the East German MPI-KM, we'll start with the four pieces of the furniture. The original, of course, MPI-K had wood, but with this they were going lightweight and cost effectiveness. So we have this unique pistol grip, which reminds me, at least in some measure, like a Hungarian, but it has this unique checkering, not exactly in the front or the sides, but in the corners. And this is a true plastic, not a Bakelite. And to go along with it, we have the gas tube. It's an earlier style. Again, since East Germany first received the data, tooling and prints and whatnot would come, but the first data would be from October of 1962. We'll see a lot of 62 style elements in their guns, including their gas tube styling. Has this plastic upper handguard. And as is famously known, originally it had a plastic lower. But this was quickly removed and they switched back to their beech wood here. Some have said this is laminate beech wood. I always thought of it as hardwood, but maybe it is a type of laminate. Either way, it doesn't have the visible pins like other style. And it just seems like it doesn't have the front clip either. They didn't have access to the Arctic birch that the Russian AKM specs called for. So yeah, this was slid back into the design after a couple of years, and most guns would have this reinstalled retroactively. Then we have this iconic pebble green buttstock. Like the other pieces of furniture, this is a true plastic. Of course, we have a metal swivel, 1 inch wide, and we do have a metal butt plate, but no trapdoor, just as the original
MPI-K didn't have a cleaning kit in the stock. Discontinued it, replacing the beechwood. This is actually pretty hollow. I mean, it's got relatively thick walls, as you'll see. Here's the edge. It does have a mold code and date code there. This pebble grain, the pebbling was done for a better grip, also to give it some reinforcement, because this is where the plastic is thicker. Seems like it's okay. You don't see these shattering. The problem with the lower handguard wasn't them breaking, it was them getting too hot and melting to the barrel. But of course, hopefully your buttstock isn't getting that hot. The reason they kind of wanted to go away from the beechwood, they were having issues with the furniture, the wood furniture, in the cold in Germany, especially the damp and rain and cold and snow. That's why they were trying to go to kind of an all-weather stuff. It just helps that this was actually extremely lightweight, making the MPI-KM, for a time, the lightest full-sized AK in production. Only probably being beat out by the AMD 65, frankly, which was in development right at the same time. The coloration on these stocks can range from almost a reddish brown to what's called a chocolate brown, although some very, very late production can be essentially black, although I've seen some sources call it more of a gray. But we're talking like 88 production. And of course, it fits a standard rear trunnion. These do all fit standard AKM, so even though this furniture is unique, you could put Russian furniture on an MPI build. Likewise, you could put MPI furniture on a Russian build. I've seen it done many a time. Now we have very standard parts, at least for a early to mid 60s AKM. Recoil spring, the kind of gentle rib top cover without the raised ledge there. We do have an AKM carrier with the lightning cut. So that's one update they made after 62. Again, they didn't start making their guns till at least 64, so it makes sense. And we have a lightning cut bolt itself. Unlike Russia, who did a paint over phosphate finish for the AKM, like Poland, East Germany did a high polished blued finish. In fact, they would keep bluing theirs for a very long time, frankly, until the 80s. Whereas Poland would switch around to paint by the 70s. So yeah, pretty standard parts here. There's only one metal difference we'll look at when we open up the bag. But this seems as good a time as any to start inspecting serial numbers. I don't expect this kit to be 100% matching, but when these were sold years back, it was kind of a majority parts matching, with some small parts that might be force matched or unnumbered or mismatched. And again, when I've opened them in the past, that's kind of what we've discovered. So let's see what we get. What's been sitting in my storage shed for years. Let's begin with, of course, the heart of the gun, the trunnion. One thing I noticed that's interesting about the East German, while the machining is quite nice, the actual polishing is on the surfaces that are exposed, like under here where it would be in the stamped receiver. It has much more of a matte texture, so that I point that out. So yeah, that we would refresh ourselves with the serial number of the trunnion, because this is what everything else will need to match. And the first component that really has to match is the bolt group, and it does. Bolt and carrier, complete with some proofs. Very nice machining on all of these. And here they are, put together just to show. I'm pressing on the bolt, and of course it will not unlock. That's the job of the carrier, but not the bolt. That's why it's important these match so they lock up properly. Of course, you would need the barrel. So, those parts match. That's a good start. What's next? Because it's so visible, I would say the next component people look towards, especially since the number is often right in your face as you shoot, is the top cover. And it too does match. So the bolt carrier, trunnion, and top cover match. Those are the major components. So that's pretty nice, honestly. Let's move on to the ones that are more often mismatched, because usually these are at least force matched. And let's begin with the gas tube. And rolling it over, we do in fact have a matching number here. Also notice the machining, the bluing is a little duller on this component. The unique plastic with the spring spacer here. And to go along with the upper handguard or top cover, let's look at the wood lower. Yeah, these were actually serial matched, at least at this point. And again, the serial inside the handguard here is matching to the kit. Considering how nice this beechwood component is, I'm actually pretty impressed. And while we're talking handguards, I mentioned there's that one piece of metal that's different on an East German. I'm sure most of you know, but the front sling slot is larger, 1 inch, for their different pattern sling. This one's got a little bit of corrosion here, which makes sense because a sling would ride on it, trapping moisture, but it would clean up just fine, and if you put a sling on, it'd be covered up anyway. In here, the three pieces are together just to kind of simulate how the handguard would look. The next part I would check on a kit would be the rear sight. Now this does have the proper rear sight, including being 800 meters instead of 1,000. And while the base is not, notice the very nice machining, while the base is not going to be serial numbered, sometimes on these, depending on the make and the model, you'll have a serial on the underside. And this is often rather lightly struck. You inscribed it with E-pen. And again, we have a matching part. This is often a mismatched or just unnumbered part. So this is where I'm really actually getting impressed with this kit. Next, another small component that's often mismatched, the recoil spring and guide. And here we do come to our first mismatched part in this kit. And that doesn't surprise me at all. These either just accidentally in the field get swapped out, or maybe intentionally, if the original part gets bent or worn out, get replaced quite a bit. And frankly, there's little reason to serial match this to the kit, to the rest of the rifle. But yeah, this is our first mismatch, but it is a correct East German. You can tell by the straight, unlipped button and just the overall quality of the machining. Another component that's frankly usually not even serial matched, and if it is often mismatching, the safety selector. And this one is a matched component. Alright, so out of the 9 serialized parts we found here, 8 match in one way or another. That's pretty good. Frankly, if someone sells me a major matching but maybe minor mismatching kit, as long as the trunnion, bolt carrier, and top cover match, I'm not going to feel too ripped off. It's nice that the handguards match. That's also kind of important, but it's mostly covered up, so it's not visible. If your safety, your recoil guide, and rear sight match, that's frankly just gravy. I'm not saying they shouldn't be the right components. If they were, say, from a Hungarian gun or even a Russian, I would be upset if I bought an East German kit. But if they're mismatched, as long as they're East German, I'm not going to complain too very much. So this is a pretty impressive MPI-KM kit, in my opinion. But what do you think? Now, what about building this? Well, some guns have proprietary or specific parts. For example, if you build up a Chinese kit or one of those quote-unquote Asian contract kits. Luckily, this East German, though, uses the same AKM spec barrel as a Russian, of course, or a Hungarian, or just about anything else. So I personally recommend the Cold Hammer Forged Chrome Line barrels, 16 1/4, 415 millimeters, from FB Radom. But there have been some Romanians, pretty much the exact same dilly whopper. And we can find quite a few US ones. That's what's nice. We can find a barrel to build these with, no problem. Just again, make sure you get AKM spec and not AK-47, AK Type 3. And here that barrel is pressed, just hand pressed into the trunnion. So, of course, what about the receiver? Well, therein again with the stamp part of the receiver, we get lucky. Any 1mm AKM spec will work. I just pulled this one out. 80%er. Of course, with one of these, you'll have to drill the pinholes and all that stuff. Notice the raw XY stampings. And here we have the trunnion slid in. Of course, this will require standard rivets, Polish, AK Builder, whatever you like. Doesn't really matter. Pretty well standard. And that's really as good as it gets, frankly, guys. One thing I should point out, for a military gun, the stamped part really doesn't have many markings. That's all up here on your trunnion. But of course, when we do a US build, we end up with typically maker's marks on the underside. Sometimes they'll put it on the side. But for a military gun, really your biggest markings on the receiver themselves will be selector marks over here. And a German would want the DES type. So there you have it. What do you think? Since this kit has been untouched in storage for so long, I just thought it might be interesting, even maybe slightly educational, to just see how we got these shipped in roughly a decade ago. Not as cool as 2 decades ago when we had the barrels with the kits, but I don't have any of those still knocking about, unfortunately. Now, I will give this disclaimer. By the time you see this video, not only will this kit have sold, it will have shipped and should be at its new home. So these videos are not backdoor advertising or whatever. So please don't ask. It's gone. It was a great find in the storage shed. I wish I could find more things like this, but I won't look a gift horse in the mouth. I just thought I would share something kind of neat with you. I'm sure you've already noticed it, but I already did an hour-long video talking about the history of East German Ernst-Thälmann or visor production. So you can check that out if you're interested. And several other German videos recently for some reason or another. But here we have it. Also, Jero helped put the pictures in, so hopefully you could see the serials clearly. As always, if you could, please do help by sharing, subscribing, Patreoning. Sorry, it's been a long day. I've been talking a lot. And with that, I will catch you very soon next time.